In the previous lesson, we saw how we can set up an interior rendering using the render settings in REDSHIFT for Cinema 4D, and also how to use different techniques to improve the render quality. We talked about the bucket rendering and the interactive rendering, what are their differences, also how we can compare different renderings together using the render view. So I can store all the passages, the information, and then we can like change. And the first thing we can improve is the output resolution in the output panel. And also here we talk about the basic render settings. In this video, we're going to go more advanced, but I think the basic settings will be fine once you understand some really simple things about the general system here. And so if you just work with the bucket quality here or the progressive samples and passages and the noising, you will get a nice rendering right away. You don't really need to go advanced unless you really want to, explore more, know more, and be more expert. But the basic will be just fine. So I've added in this scene here some IS lights, some spotlights to improve the interior overall lighting. So the more lights you have, the more photons you have, the more sampling, the more global illumination quality, and it will result in a better render. So you need to consider always to play with natural lighting as well as additional artificial lights, or in this case, I've also used the portal light, which helps to convey the light inside the interior. We also talk about more the camera settings, how we can use the camera as a real camera, as a camera in real life using real life settings like the ISO or the shutter speed or the aperture for the depth of field effect. You can see some depth of field here to put things out of focus or in focus and make it look more realistic and apply some vignetting and other lens effects and also some post-production to make the render stand out. I didn't use like bloom or streaks here or other post-production effects, which could be good, but just to show you that you have different options, you can also create a clean rendering. And you can always monitor the render time and then come back, change, decrease, perhaps the quality, increase the denoising, but at the end, as we said in the previous video, the main goal, the main objective is to get rid of the noise. If you have lower quality of calculation here, if you use less samples, less lights, you're gonna have more noise, and that's something you don't want to have. So you either increase the quality or you use the denoising, but it cannot help you every time. So in the basic settings, we can choose between production and real time. And real time is going to be a little bit more approximate, but faster. And then we can switch from base to advanced. And in the advanced section, we have a lot of parameters. They're really, really like, I don't know, hundreds of parameters. So I cannot explain everything. I'm just going to go like in the most important ones, or the ones that you probably want to consider, and perhaps you can always deepen your knowledge. So we have basically sampling, we have motion blur, we add global illumination, we have all these things that we just set up with a single parameter. Here we have like a bunch of parameters. Now global illumination, we already talked about that in the previous video about the direct and indirect lighting, or primary and secondary. Now this can vary a little bit. For example, brute force is more accurate, but it's going to be slower, and irradiance is going to be like faster, but it's going to be less accurate. And also it's suggested if you don't want flickering in the animation to use brute force rather than irradiance cache. And then we have caustics, AOVs, which are other like more advanced features that we're gonna keep it in the main ones in this case. Now system also could be important if you want to change the bucket size, for example. That's gonna affect the performance. So if you have a lot of RAM, you probably want to have like larger bucket size, so you're gonna render faster if you have like faster RAM. Otherwise, you can lower them down, and it's just make some tests, check and monitor the render times, and see which of these settings is going to affect the timing or the quality, one or the other. And you always need to balance between quality and final effect. You can see here the difference between the backend render and the progressive one. So there is a lot of difference. So it really does matter how you set up the render engine. And apparently the best one, if you want to go for the final render, is the bucket mode. So you use the IPR or interactive uh, progressive rendering only when you're working during the scene, when you're working in your scene. And when you finish to set up everything, if you and I have like the best, you're gonna go for bucket with high quality settings. So just experiment, save your snapshots, compare them, and see which works best. Now I've added here some IA slides which also are going to improve the render. So if I go again in the interactive progressive rendering, I can turn them off and I can see the difference right away. So you can see the scene is getting really dark. So also we need to adjust exposure if we don't have enough light. And here also I can use just natural light, the sunlight, the physical sun, or the infinite light and the dome light, or we can use a combination of the two. So my opinion is, go one by one, try to understand which does what, and then you can decide if you want to turn something off, something on. If you want to do like a day render or a night rendering, you need to consider all this stuff. Now in this lesson, we're going to move outside. We're going to do some exterior renderings, but things we're going to say in this video can be, of course, applied also to interior. And some of these things can be only useful, I think, on the exterior. So let's see what's going to happen here. So I'm going to go outside, and we have a nice day scene, kind of a sunset actually, rather than a midday scene. But in this video, I want to go like into a night scene. I want to show you how you can switch from day to night with just a few clicks. So I'm going to go back into the render settings here first. Let's talk about some of these settings, advanced settings. So the sampling, we talk about the sampling and the denoising, and the fact that we can use one or the other or a combination of the two. Now we do have here a lot of options for the denoising. So it's not just apply the denoiser or enable, disable. We have like parameters that will help us to set up different types of denoisers, because these are different like engines that will create a similar result, but in a way slightly different. So, well, I'm not gonna go again through all of these settings, but just know that if you want, you can decide which denoiser you want to use. I usually use optics. Then here you have the render engine, again, production, real time, again, interactive, progressive, or final rendering bucket. So you can also set up like bucket and bucket, or progressive and progressive. And again, we have progressive passes. So just like the basic settings, but also we have here some more advanced settings for the sampling. So the only things that change between basic and advanced is that you're gonna have like a lot of other parameters that you can play with, but it's gonna be subtle. It's gonna be just a little difference. I'm gonna still use this scene that I got from Sketchfab, which is called the floating tiny home. Again, you have all the information right here, the author, the formats, so on, so you can download it and use it. And I want to also show you another source, which is Substance Share, which is a community, and you can find here some community assets, which are like 3D objects and materials created with Substance. So if you're interested in Substance 3D Painter or other Substance software, you can check other courses here in the channel. Just look for them. You'll find the playlist. Now, another one is the Adobe Substance 3D, market, or well, it's not a market, but you need to be